If you are not aware of the information I'm about to tell you, then this will be by far the most important video you watch today, and I'm going to keep it really short so that the message can be shared. I'm going to explain to you briefly my personal reasons for not wanting to take the jibby jab. You can, I'm sure, read between the lines as to what that means. First of all, have you heard of the cases in America where genetically modified seed from Monsanto makes its way into farms and into crops, and then they do tests and they find tiny little traces of genetically modified seed amongst acres and acres of organic seed, and they say that the farmer is in breach of patent, and then they seize the farm and the farm becomes property of Monsanto. You've heard of these court cases happen, I'm sure. Okay, the second thing is, if you today had a sick dog or a cat and you wanted to go put your cat or dog down and put it to sleep and euthanize it, would you be tried for murder? Would there be any legal ramifications of you putting your dog or cat down? No. Why? Because they are outside of human rights. Okay, you're with me so far. How many movies have you seen where, like, there's a CIA super soldier and they escape from the underground lab, and then the corporations go, the asset is loose, and they go and hunt them down, and they are intellectual property of the company that modified them. You're with me so far? Great. You've probably also seen, like in movies like Bloodshot with Vin Diesel, whether you've seen it or not, where there's all of these little nanobots that are moving through the blood of the protagonist, in this case, Vin Diesel, and they're saying like, oh, they give you superpowers and stuff like that. And we've also been bred on countless movies of people trying to take over the world, but it's always up from the sky. It's always people trying to attack from above or from without. It's always aliens or some other kind of invading force. Now, these key concepts are actually quite important to understand or understand, and I'm going to explain why. A Supreme Court ruling recently said that you cannot patent human DNA because it is part of nature, and you cannot patent nature. You cannot patent nature. However, if you have modified code within your genome, then you can be patented, and it is considered patentable, just like Dolly the sheep is patented by the company that made Dolly the sheep, not by nature. So if the jibby jab that you take modifies your genes, then you become intellectual property of the company that is giving it to you. And in the same way that a farmer's crop can be seized just because of tiny traces of genetically modified material, so in theory, you can also be seized because you contain traces of genetically modified material, which means you are no longer fully human, which means you are no longer protected under human rights. Do you get how deep this goes? And sure, fact checkers will pop up and tell you that this is false because of this reason and that reason. And the thing is, they're operating under what's known as emergency status. So they can pretty much say and do anything and get away with it because they're like, hey, we're rushing because it's under emergency status. So they have legal indemnification. They have legal protection, no matter what happens to you. And once they've duped you into getting this and having your genetics modified, and you can go on the Moderna website, pretend you're an investor and download the PDF to see what you're investing in, and they will tell you that it has a software-like program, which they've called the software of life, that can modify what proteins your body creates, which means that you become genetically modified. And if you're genetically modified, you're patentable. In the same way that if you watch Blade Runner, you know, Ryan Gosling's character, he's like, no, I'm human. And they zoom in on his DNA and they find a serial code, which shows that he's actually been created. That then means that he is property of the company that created him, not of nature, no longer governed by the same laws of the natural world. This is really, really important stuff. This is not the same thing that you were given as a kid or as an infant. This is an entirely new technology. And of course, they are going to not be fully transparent about everything that's in it because the thing is, they're not forcing you. That's the really fascinating part, is you have a responsibility for your own choices. And because a lot of people are proudly taking it and wearing a badge like, look, I just got, I got my thing. What that's doing is you are essentially volunteering to become a patented intellectual property of these huge mega corporations, and you are voluntarily handing over all your human rights. And there will come a day where you will no longer be protected by the human rights, the Geneva Convention, the Nuremberg Code, all of those things, because you are no longer human. This is very real. This is what the Fourth Industrial Revolution is all about. It's the merger of the biological with the synthetic. And the thing is, we've been programmed to look for the attack from without, but actually the attack is coming from within. It's an internal takeover. And once you have these little nanites inside your system, they begin to replicate and duplicate. And once they replicate and duplicate, it's like a swarm or an army of these synthetic AI-driven nodules that are inside your body. And they can go and shut off certain receptors in your brain. They can block certain things in your body. They can report back to their source what you're doing, your brain activity, if you're blinking, if you're angry, if you're sleeping, if you're making love, how much you've eaten, what your caloric intake is for the day, your resting heart rate. They can track everything. So this is about taking control and making it insidious, making it intravenous, bringing it within your very system. And as far as I'm aware right now, it's irrevocable. So this is the stuff that you need to be aware of. And hey, you can dismiss this as sci-fi. That's totally fine. You are operating within a free will realm. This universe is a free will realm. You get to make your own choices. But at least you can't say, I haven't been warned. That has been your public service announcement. Share this. What do you think? Do you feel that there's some truth to this? Do you feel there is some validity to what I'm saying? This runs very deep. There is in fact a patent out by Microsoft which links human activity to cryptocurrency, because in the future that's part of this insidious control plan, is to mean that you can't buy or sell or trade or move unless you abide by and comply to certain obligations. And because you are no longer human, you won't be protected by your former rights. All right, that's my little service announcement. Drop it below. Big love. Take care. Stay blessed. Stay aware. Stay awake. And make choices for yourself. There will come a day where you can't blame anyone else for making that decision for you. You are voluntarily making this decision. And of course, they're going to make it challenging for you. Oh, you can't travel unless you XYZ. You can't see your parents or your friends unless you XYZ. It's up to you to stay vigilant and stay aware. We number in the hundreds of millions. There is many, 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 many people who see through this. And so if you are on the fence, maybe this will give you something a little bit further to look into. Look into the Supreme Court ruling. Look into the fact that many, many farmers have lost all of their acres of farmland just because of traces of modified seed. If you have traces of modified code, you are no longer protected by nature. You become intellectual property of the corporation. Be aware.